Hey guys, good evening. How's everyone doing today? Thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully we're doing okay. So sorry for the delay, but it's a long day today. So needless to say, it was a long day. we started taking some of our kids in today for orientation. So they're not officially back in, but we are allowed to kind of do small bursts of students to come into the campus. So we had 2 out of 4 small visits today in our class, in our school, and it was definitely was a burst of energy, but at the same time a lot of shifting and orienting, since technically that was kind of like the first time we were doing a hybrid. So definitely an interesting process. Students were happy to be on campus, lots of windows open, lots of doors open, a lot of building doors open. So it was really interesting to kind of see how it all kind of came together at the end of the day. Even like some of my students wanted to like do like little selfies and things like that, and I was just like, okay. For some, that was actually the first time I met them ever in person. Like we've been working together like almost a year now, or a year, and for many of them, that's like the first time I got to meet them ever in person. So it's kind of interesting when you meet somebody for the first time in person virtually, and you've been teaching them virtually and you meet them in person for the first time. It was kind of like, it was just a really interesting process. So it was a lot of shifting, a lot of going from one to the other. But at the end of the day, it was good to see everybody, and yeah, and small classroom sizes. That's what a concept. There was like 8 students in one morning group, and then like 4 in another morning group, and then Thursday we're gonna do it again. So yeah, this is gonna be an interesting week in my energy, because it's gonna be like shifting from one thing to the next. So I'm good. We'll be good either way. So very interesting stuff nonetheless. So but it's good to see everybody. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend and had a good quick run through. We got some pretty good cool things happening this evening, and just kind of jump in and talk a little bit about that. First things first, we are now entering into the Adobe Illustrator version. So we're actually going to get into like all things vector related. So that's actually really exciting. So after going through like principles of design and everything in between, we finally get to kind of talk a little bit about vector images, vector graphics, Adobe Illustrator. So we're gonna get to talk a little bit about that this evening, which is really cool. So we're gonna be hitting Adobe Illustrator tonight. So that's gonna be really cool. So we finally now get to talk a little bit about some of the basic tools, basic functionality, which is really cool. So we're gonna get into that this evening. We're also gonna talk a little bit about how computers create images. So for some of you guys, it's sort of like an introductory or a refresher, and for some it's an introduction. But we'll talk a little bit about what is this thing about vector versus raster. And we're going to explore that a little bit this evening, see what's happening in that world, right? And then in packaging design, we're going to be looking at some of those phase 1 renditions. So talking a little bit about some of the packaging designs. So for our packaging design students this evening, some of you guys will get a little bit of a refresher, but in reference to packaging design, let me go ahead and switch over there so we can kind of take a little peek at it. But we'll finally get to talk a little bit about, and always gotta love shuffling your images, right? But we're gonna talk a little bit about your hypothetical product line. So we're gonna look at that this evening in packaging. But more specifically, we're gonna take a closer look at the phase 1, which is research and strategy, and talk a little bit about your product and what exactly is the packaging or product line or product packaging line we're going to be creating. So it's going to be an interesting process for packaging design this evening too. So we got a lot of things happening, and it's going to be a bit of a bit of a whirlwind, but we got everything structured and laid out, so it's going to be a good evening regardless. Okay, so let's do this. With digital illustration, guys, we got the week 5 pieces ready to go. So let me go ahead and actually switch over and take a closer look. So if we look onto Canvas, you'll notice that the discussion for the week is ready to go. And so I'm going to launch that right now so you can take a peek at it. And there's actually a short documentary that I like to kind of spend taking about 20 minutes to kind of look at that. It's called the Adobe Illustrator story. I'm not sure if anyone's ever seen that before. So good call right there. And yes, I believe we are in week 5. Did I label it incorrectly? Yeah, week 5. So we are definitely getting into week 5 already, believe it or not. So time flies, but we spent literally like an entire month going over just some of the basics. Gosh, yeah, we were going over designer therapy, in terms of pricing clients, habits, formation, principles of design, how graphic designers see. And now we're going into the actual Adobe Illustrator tool or program, I should say. So it's gonna be a really cool process. I will say this though about principles and elements of design. We'll always continue to do warm-ups related to the principles of design. So we'll still keep flexing that muscle overall. But every now and again, we'll kind of we'll probably put like a little film or a little bit of a discussion topic in there like tonight, but we'll still be flexing that muscle for principles of design and how we see graphics. And so for those of you guys that got in those principles of design, breathe a little bit easier, because the good news is that massive writing section is passed. We'll probably see that again. We will be seeing that again when we get to minimalist poster. So you'll be writing about your own work after that and doing some warm-ups. So you probably saw like a little bit of a peak where it was like, wow, this is pretty challenging. Now from here on in, we're going to be doing a lot of the tools, graphics, and everything of that sort. So I always hit hard the theory and just principles in the very, very beginning. And then after that, we get into the tool set, because you'll start to find that once you know what you're looking for graphically and how to see, and this goes for packaging as well, once you know specifically what to see and what you're looking for, then it's easier to build after that. Oftentimes in some classes, courses, even some schools, they kind of start the opposite. They start with technical tools and they kind of embed theory. Every teacher's a little bit different. For me, I kind of like to embed the theory first, because you don't need to have a computer to be able to see an image, right? If you can see it, you can interpret it with or without a computer. So it makes more sense to kind of like understand what you're looking for, how to interpret the graphic, and then kind of build after that. So interpreting art or interpreting graphics is a little bit more, put it this way, I haven't seen too many YouTube videos that kind of breaks it down in a way that's easy to understand. And so technical stuff is obviously easier to understand, but kind of seeing things from the humanities point of view, that stuff takes a little bit more thought, a little bit more intentionality, a little bit more scaffolding, I would say. So that's the reason why we kind of started off in the beginning. And then tomorrow, what will happen too, just a quick side note, is that I'll start to enter points in for all the principles of design. And then kind of see how that's applied, right? So I'll start putting in scores and things of that sort. If there's an assignment that's missing for folks that are a little bit late, please still get it in there. COVID is a legitimate reason for work to run late. So use that, right? If something came up personally, you can always jump back on board. If you're watching the recording, you can always jump back on board. And I'll probably be sending you guys, more than likely for a few of us, I'll send you guys a couple of short recordings, and I'll email them over to you just to tell you, hey, I noticed that you're missing an assignment or two. Here's how you can catch up. And you'll be surprised how most of the work that you're doing, you'll be caught up in literally 1 hour. So if you feel like you're super behind, don't be encouraged, because it's actually, you might, I would say about majority of you guys in the class, you can get caught up in literally 60 minutes or in 1 hour time. So that's like huge, right? So you can get caught up literally in a short amount of time. And I kind of designed it that way. So then that way you can kind of build up from there. Because if you're behind, all you got to do is write something. If you're behind, all you have to do is write something, post something in the discussion. If you're behind, it's more little things than it is like the bigger things. Does that make sense? So I kind of put a lot of little things that you can catch up with. So then that way it kind of balances out with the longer term assignments that are to come. So that's just by planning. Okay. So just letting you know, just to give you guys a little bit of an inside scoop. Okay. And yeah, actually I use it all the time now at work and in everyday life. So yeah, principles of design is super key. That's why I started in the beginning. You don't need high technical stuff. You don't need all the bells and the whistles and all the software to do this stuff. We can start with simple graphics, simple pictures, posters, t-shirts. We can break down principles of designs graphically in any format. And so now you can see it everywhere that you go. So it's great to see that it's being applied in different zones and in different industries as well. Okay. So, but be encouraged, guys. You're not out of the woods yet. If you're behind, you can totally get caught up. And I'll make some time tomorrow to send some messages, emails, and have everybody have an opportunity to catch up. Okay. So just giving you a heads up. So that sounds good to you. You can give me a little thumbs up emoji. I've been doing this a long enough time to set it up so that you guys can be successful. Okay. So that's the whole point. And I get it. We all work. We have families. So we want to make sure that you have enough time in class to do all these things, ask questions, and not have me lecture forever, right? So that's kind of the concept behind that. Okay. Okay. So rewind. Let's start off with some documentaries. Okay. The Adobe Illustrator story, digital illustration. We'll start off with you guys. So if we go to Canvas, you'll notice that in the discussion here for this week, there is a 20-minute documentary on the Adobe Illustrator story. We're going to watch that. We're actually going to spend the first 20 minutes of class just kind of watching that. It's 19 minutes and 1 second. And it's literally a documentary film that talks about the history of Adobe Illustrator. So the founders, the designers that were part of it. I don't know, for me, it's pretty fascinating. And it kind of breaks down like what happened in 1987 when it first shipped, right? So that's kind of a cool little backstory. And so I love for you guys to spend 19 minutes watching this just to kind of get you warmed up about what this program is and what it does. And then while you're watching that, in packaging design, we'll start developing a breakout room so that you guys can meet me there. And we can check in with you guys to see what's happening, okay? So just out of curiosity, does everyone have the ability to go into Canvas and pull this video up? If you can watch this on your own for 20 minutes, give me a little thumbs up emoji. I wanna make sure, because sometimes there might be people that are away from their desktops and might not be able to play this. So is everyone able to play this at home without me playing it for you? So that should work, right? Okay. If you already watched it, that's great. So then go ahead and enter some replies in the discussion. Feel free to do that. But we're gonna just give it about 25 minutes to have you guys watch the first 19 minutes of the documentary. Another 5 minutes to answer the post. So that gives us 10 points right there. But I always like to start off with the film just to kind of give a little bit of a warm up to everybody. So feel free to watch the film. If you watched it, feel free to reply to it and share some thoughts about what you felt about it. And then in 25 minutes, we will check in. So 7:25, we will check in and go from there. Does that sound good to everybody? And there. So we'll start off with a little bit of history, get a little bit of a feel for this program, what it does. And it's a Vimeo staff pick. So that for those that are familiar, Vimeo is kind of like a fancy YouTube, and it has more storytelling than anything. And so it has they pretty much liked it because of this history behind it. And they do showcase a couple of past and well-known designers that use the program to do some pretty cool graphics that you may have seen online as well. Okay. All right, very cool. So let's go ahead and give it about 25 minutes. So we're at 6:59, 7:25, we'll do a check-in and move on with graphics. And then while you're watching that, I'm gonna create a breakout room for packaging design. And I'm actually gonna create 2 breakout rooms just to be on there. We're gonna do packaging design. Okay, and I'm gonna do another one, which is one-on-one with just in case we need any of those formats. And I'm gonna put about 120. So 8, 9, it is 120. And 150 minutes. And set countdown for there, and we'll open up all the rooms there. Okay. All right. So packaging design, I will meet you guys over in the packaging room. Feel free to join me over there. And we will get you guys set up. And then digital illustration, feel free to watch the film and then answer the discussion question. And we'll connect in just a few moments, okay? And then we'll set you over there. All right, very, very cool. And I shall return. Okay, so back again, guys. I don't want to interrupt, but anyone still watching the video? A little thumbs up. Okay, so I don't want to interrupt. So if you are watching it, are you almost done? Maybe give me a little thumbs up, like almost done. Okay, cool. Maybe type in the chat for me, like how many minutes you got left. And then what I'll do is kind of preset things up. Oh, okay, about 5 more minutes. Perfect. Okay, no worries. Okay, so then we'll take a quick peek. And while we're waiting about 5 minutes there, if you already posted your reply, maybe give me a quick little thumbs up just to check in. How many of you guys have already sent in your reply on the discussion post? If you have a little thumbs up just to show me that you completed it, that'd be great. Okay, everyone's working on it. Okay, cool. So then it sounds like everyone's still working on it. Okay, so if you're still working on typing in your reply, give me a thumbs up. I have a feeling it's gonna explode. Okay, that's where everybody's at. Okay, cool. So when you're done, then maybe type in the chat done or I'm done. And then that way I can kind of like gauge to see where we can go in the discussion. I already have packaging on their way. So I'll wait a few minutes for everyone so we can kind of talk a little bit about what you saw and what how the graphics work. I'll go to Canvas and see some of your replies. And then that way I'll put in some points while we're at it. Do a little French music tonight. All right, so far so good, guys. Let me check in really quick. I think I see a hand raised there. Let me take a look.
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah, did you want to voice it or do you want me to go through direct message? Is that?
I didn't mind voicing it because it was a lot.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
For the activity, the Illustrator activity, I clicked on the slide and it took me to the Google Drive where it has it, but it only has 3 slides. And I don't know if there's a missing.
Good question. Let me take a look. For that activity, it could very well be missing. Let's take a look. Maybe something happened to the actual exercise. The tools exercise, right? Let's take a look. And tools there. So no, it's you're correct on that. You're good. Matter of fact, we're gonna get to that in just a couple of seconds, but that is the correct slide. So we should be, as a matter of fact, let me triple check something just to make sure.
Okay, so we're gonna be doing it together.
Yeah, we'll do it in class. I actually have one small exercise, which is kind of like a pixel art exercise in there. It's not in it, but I'll send it to you really quick, where we kind of look at pixel art. We talk a little bit about the differences between vector versus raster. And so I sent you the link, and that way you can kind of pull it up, but I'm going to pull it up in just a second. It's kind of like a little exercise that we can kind of engage and kind of see where everyone's at, but we'll do the Illustrator CC tools exercise also this evening as well.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. All right, guys. So slowly we're getting a few folks completed there. Okay, cool. So that's awesome. And then before we do that, I'm going to put in one little link in advance. We'll have a little bit of fun with it, but we'll talk a little bit about vector versus raster in just a few moments, in fact. This will be like a short exercise to kind of do that. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But as you're slowly getting done, and then we'll see where everyone is on the postings. And I'm always a big fan of the discussions there, especially when it comes to the videos. Hopefully you guys like the video as well, or are enjoying it. If you did, maybe a little thumbs up emoji. Yeah, I thought it was a very helpful documentary, just to kind of give a little bit of perspective. And pull in on the discussions here. 64 discussion. Okay, just checking in. Anyone still typing by any chance on the discussion post? Just wanted to check in. If you are, go ahead and a little thumbs up. That'd be great. Okay, and then for the rest of the class, how many guys have already watched the film and successfully already caught the 20 minutes there? give me a little thumbs up emoji. Just want to make sure that you guys got a chance to watch it. And discussion as well. Okay, perfect. All right, sounds good. And again, if you're done with the discussion, go ahead and type it in. If you're still typing out the discussion, don't worry. The main idea was so that you guys got a chance to watch it and then put a few posts. So if you're almost done, go ahead and take a quick moment to complete that last sentence there. Or you can keep the window open and we can finish it up a little bit later. But I'll give you guys about a couple minutes there. So 2 more minutes sound good before we move forward and talk a little bit about images. If that's okay with you, give me a little thumbs up. Or if you're like, if you need a little bit more time, maybe give me an X and be like, I'm not done, professor. And you can give me a little red X to let me know, like, you're not quite ready to move forward. Okay, awesome. Okay, we'll give it about another minute and then we'll move forward there and talk a little bit about computers and images and things of that sort. So this is kind of like a little pre-setting discussion before we actually get into the Adobe Illustrator, but we will get into it tonight, believe me. We'll get started in about 1 minute. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to move forward. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just briefly graphics, okay? So hopefully you guys like that documentary. Has anyone ever watched that documentary before this class by any chance? If you have, maybe, okay, so most of us have not. Okay, and for some of you guys, this was the first time actually watching this, right? Like this was like the first time watching it there. Yeah. Maybe take a moment in the chat, like maybe what was like one thing that kind of surprised you about this, the history. I mean, 1987 is a long time ago. You know, for some of you, you weren't born yet. I think I was like 7, 8 years old at the time. But Adobe's been around for many, many, many years. But maybe one thing that kind of stood out to you about the film, go ahead and type it in the chat. What was one thing that just surprised you, that you discovered, whether it was about the program, about what designers used to do pre-computer days? I think for me personally, when I first watched it, I think the thing that stood out to me was the whole like by hand, how everything was done by hand, using cameras and film and line spacing before the computer. It was like literally a completely different world back in the day, right? And so that stood out to me. Like I can't imagine doing this by hand. And let alone there was a generation of designers that spent hours working on type, right? Whereas today it's as easy as like 2 clicks with a mouse and then some, right? Voicing it in and then using the text boxes and all this digital publication. It's pretty amazing how far it's come. That was something that stood out to me. Jesus said, watch it for the first time, 7th grader, use the green font and green screen Macintosh computer at the time. Yeah. So I actually have the green screen Macintosh computer in my other classroom. I'll try to see if I can pop it up one of these days. If I'm ever late in class or doing an evening event, you can connect and I'll show it to you guys. Or maybe I'll do like a little video showcasing it. That'd be pretty cool. Dre, you said like watching the breakthrough of creating the pro script, slowly developing the program that can create the script. Yep. So that's a really cool process, how it came about during the whole desktop publishing revolution. Yeah, it was interesting because the desktop publishing was huge, but the original intent of like Steve Jobs and that whole generation of computer entrepreneurs was to basically make the digital office, right? So publication just happened to be the thing that kicked it, but they really were envisioning like a digital office where everything was, the entire office was digitized, as it were, right? So desktop publishing, desktop computers, right? The top of your desk, right? It was supposed to be your office digitally on a computer. So publishing was a big factor in that, writing things, writing code, writing accounts, everything you would do on paper, you would do it digitally, right? And that's kind of like how Bill Gates kicked off with Windows, and Windows made it easy to do office related things. And so there's that little bit of that history happening there. Didn't know the software was this old, knowing the fact that the internet is about 10 to 15 years old. Yeah. So internet, we had desktop publishing before we had internet, believe it or not. So that was pretty amazing, right? And then when the internet came, it connected all these offices. But the original intent was to have a standalone office without internet, which is hard to kind of imagine today, right? Outside people's comfort zone to start using Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, totally. Very true, Francesca. Elizabeth says, I didn't know the program has been around since 1987. Didn't know that Adobe Illustrator was from 1987. The internet would go online 94. Yeah, it's really interesting how these two worlds kind of collided. But it's hard to imagine a computer without internet, right? But the fact that these things were computerized, what do they call typewriters? So these were basically like digital typewriters. And even before my computer, I had one of those like digital typewriters. It was a typewriter, but it had like a little tiny screen on it, right? So before I had a computer, I actually had a typewriter, and I remember the days when I had to like write a report, and if I didn't have the whiteout for that special one, I would have to type it all over again, the entire report. And so the struggle was real back then. So I do remember those days. Yeah, so the program has come a long way, and like 40 years, and 40 plus years actually. And it's been quite a ride, right? So briefly, I want to kind of discuss just a little bit about like what is it that this computer does and how these computers create images. Now, if you were ever to take, like, let's say the Photoshop class, or take my Photoshop class coming up, we would talk about this. This is the same deck or presentation. But essentially, when we think about computers, I always think about, or graphics, or how computers make images. I always think about Super Mario Brothers, and kind of like the whole idea of like pixels and how it all kind of comes about, right? And I always like to kind of start here before I go into Illustrator to kind of show the differences between the two worlds of like raster images and vector graphics, okay? And if you guys are familiar with raster versus vector, maybe you can give me a little thumbs up emoji. I'm curious to know how many of you guys are familiar with that term. Pixel versus vector, or ever heard of raster versus vector? Okay, a couple of us, or one of us, and then one of us haven't. Okay, perfect. Most of us, this is the first time, or probably are getting a little bit more in depth into it. Let me go ahead and take a drink because it'll be a little bit lengthy. Essentially, when it comes to how a computer creates an image, I always start off with Super Mario Bros. Because it's kind of like the best entry of like understanding the two worlds. Super Mario Brothers is kind of like, or Nintendo, even Atari, right? these games definitely use this notion of pixels, right? And when we think of like Adobe Illustrator, I think of the opposite, which is something called a raster image. And what raster images are basically graphics that are created with pixels, or like these little tiny squares that are called pixels. And it's something to kind of keep in mind, but just bear with me with the concept there. But just know that raster images are these things that where photographs, videos, they all kind of use this term, right? The raster image. And essentially the features of a raster image are image files. They have something called resolution dependency. They use this term called pixels, which basically the more of these little squares you have, they add to higher resolution, sharper images and whatnot, right? So that's kind of a raster image. And raster images are basically what you would get if you take a photo, a small photo, and make it bigger or blow it up. It's basically this image that you see on your screen, which is showing this little tiny like graphic. And if I were to zoom in on the graphic or blow it up on my phone or pinch it wide with my phone, it would get blurry. And I would see these squares, and these squares have like these different shades of black, gray, and color, right? Those little squares are basically pixels. Each pixel has a value of color. And the more of those little boxes that you have, the larger the file, the sharper the image, okay? And so I'm gonna show you a quick snippet of a commercial for, I forget the version of iPad, but I like the illustration and the video they create because it does break down a little bit of what pixels are essentially. So let me play the video so you can get a little bit of a feel for it, okay? Let me pause sound here and then we'll kind of get a little bit of a feel for it. Okay, here we go.
Pixels. A pixel is made up of red, green, and blue subpixels, with a signal telling each one when and how much to light up. That's how colors are created. But when you squeeze 4 times the pixels into the same space, signals can get crossed. Colors become distorted, and images get fuzzy. To solve this, we had to elevate the pixels onto a different plane and separate them from the signals.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it there for just a quick second. So your computers, all our computers, even your mobile phones, are when we see a little square of color or a pixel, that little pixel is basically shooting 3 different colors. Does that make sense? And those 3 colors are red, green, and blue. It's those 3 colors essentially. And those 3 colors of light are mixing together with other pixels with red, greens, and blues into that. And they're all mixing together to create color. So as they're mixing together, right, this little pixel made up of these 3 little lights of red, green, and blue, right? When those colors mix, or those lights or frequencies mix, you get different shades of color. Okay, does that kind of make sense, first of all? Like your screen is made up of a lot of these little tiny squares, and these little pixels are basically the color red, the color green, and the color blue. Okay, so let me just continue with the video so you can watch that.
It's a major breakthrough, and it's the key to making the pixels so
zoom
small
out,
and so close together that the human eye can't even distinguish them. That's why the Retina display on the new iPad is the most advanced display you've ever seen.
Okay, so does that kind of make sense? We have literally on your screen millions of these little squares, like millions, okay? And when you see on a commercial, or when you buy a computer, it says like the resolution is like 2000 by 2000 pixels, right? What they're really saying is that there's literally across the horizontal of your screen, across the vertical of your screen, there's this many pixels across that screen. Does that make sense? So if you were to take a magnifying glass and look right into your screen, your monitor, even on your phone, okay, at some point you're gonna see these little tiny red, green, and yellow, RGB, red, green, and blue lights within them. And because our eyes, using Gestalt, right, psychology, right, we see all these colors, all we're trying to do is make out an image and group them and kind of determine something. So the computer is basically having all these graphics, all these little squares, all these pixels. And when you put them all together, you create your image. And it's kind of nuts when you think about it, because here's another way of looking at it, right? That's a lot of squares. That's a lot of pixels on your screen. But the technology's been around for many years, right? Since 1987, that we've basically gotten better and better at putting more of these squares in our screens, and now even in our pockets. Okay, so it was a revolutionary piece of technology because it made the images, we can now put videos and images together. Okay, and so what you see on the left is RGB, red, green, and blue, the little squares. And so when you look at color theory and you mix colors, basically there's two ways you can mix colors. You can mix colors using light, right? So different shades of light create these different colors, or you can mix colors using actual paint, which is subtractive colors. So when we think of color, we can only interpret it basically according to mixing light or mixing literally like actual ink. So light and actual substance, or material versus light. These are like the two ways that we can kind of mix color. But what's interesting is that when we use like ink or paint, we actually use up to 4 different colors to mix to get all colors, right? So they're similar. It's cyan, C, magenta M, yellow, Y, and then K, which is black. But all these colors mix to create something. And your screen is using your computer, basically, or the computer is taking the colors on the screen and reinterpreting it for an ink printer. So it's calculating from light to actual ink, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because it's doing a lot to interpret those colors. That's why sometimes whatever you see on your screen may not be the actual color on paper, because the computer needs to understand that, well, I'm going from light to ink, so I have to change the levels so that whatever's on my screen translates what's on the paper. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? So there's a lot of calculation going on between screen versus actual like paper printing or photo printing. Okay, it's just to kind of give you guys a little bit of perspective. So anytime you look on your phone and you see video or FaceTime or you see photos, right? There's basically, if you were to pause it, the video, or take that photo and zoom in, like I said, you would see all these pixels, all these thousands of squares, but they all add up to basically individual squares in different shades of color, right? Our brains are just putting it all together to create an image. And so the color representation, if you're interested into the math, this is what the math says, right? It says that, one color, one pixel can produce 256 shades of red, green, and blue. Okay, so that one pixel, that one little tiny pixel can make 256 different shades, okay, of color. So out of that one pixel, right, and there's 3 channels, 24 bits of color, that's 2 to the 24th power. That's over 16 million different variations of color. So 16,777,216 different ranges of color, okay, that we can create on your mobile phone, on your computer screen. And now that we see in that with the iPad, there's like multiple layers of retina display, right? So now we got more pictures happening under retina display, which basically retina display, our eye can only interpret so much. Like your retina display is basically so HD that the human eye can interpret beyond a certain level of HD, if that makes sense. So even though technically it's HD beyond HD, our brains can only interpret HD up to a certain level, up to a certain extent. That's why it's called retina display. Which means like your eye can only interpret that information to set it up. Yes, it is recording too, by the way. So thanks for checking in, Oscar. So yeah, so it's really crazy when you think about it, right? Our brains can only take so much color and interpretation, yet we're getting some of the sharpest qualities beyond the human eye. And so that's kind of the long answer for it, okay? So if you've ever been to Kinko's and you say, hey, I got a picture, can you print it out? And then they make it bigger and it looks super blurry. That's why it looked blurry. And it drives people at Kinko's crazy, right? Because they know it, but not everyone else knows it, right? You know, when the internet was first born in the 90s, everyone started putting really low quality images, the crappy images, and it never really left to a degree. So in order to speed things up with the internet, you know, a bunch of the, you know, computer scientists, I don't even know who it was specifically, they said, okay, guys, we're gonna need, it's not fast, but we want pictures. So what's the magic number? And they said 72 pixels per inch. What is, do we agree? 72 horizontally, 72 vertically. Is that good enough? It's good enough for the 90s. And then we have all these images, and next thing you know, for like 10 plus years, it was flooded with millions and millions of images that are 72 pixels per inch, and it never really left. So anytime you pull a graphic, you'll probably, chances are, find a really blurry image from way back when. And most of the time now, everyone's uploading higher quality images, but the industry standard typically is about 72 pixels per inch, which has kind of stayed the norm, right? Ever since then. So the internet can handle high images, the internet can handle video, but for web capabilities and things like that, there's still people that are producing 72 DPI images, maybe up to 150 within there. And by 150, I mean like 150 pixels, 150 pixels, right? So that's basically the resolution. But that, now you're starting to understand the terms, right? So anytime you go bigger on an image with low resolution, so less pixels on the screen, and you make it bigger or enlarge it, it's going to look blurry. Lower resolution images are smaller in bit size than larger images, more bits. Correct. Yeah. So they have smaller bits than higher. So more pixels, the more bits, higher the sharper the image, the sharper the quality of the image, right? And now we have HD in our phones. So it's crazy how far they're advancing, but also at the same time, people don't really know how much power they have, right? And the ones that do know, you know, are saying, wow, that's you know, I could take like really high quality images. Now we're crossing into a world where it's all quality all the time and it's higher anyway. So yeah, so as you can see, the photo on the left, sharper image. When you take that photo and you print it into a larger size, you're going to get blurriness, or what we call pixelization, which is we start to see the edges and the squares and things of that sort. Okay. Now, when we switch over to something like Adobe Illustrator, we get something called vector versus raster, right? Or we get vector. Okay. And when you see this image, the obvious is key. Like, what's the difference between the circle on top and the circle on the bottom there? Or what's the difference between Illustrator, which uses something called vector graphics? We'll learn that in a moment. And versus like raster images, which is something you would get in Photoshop. Like, what's the obvious answer that you see between the two circles there? Go ahead and take a moment to type it out. But what do we see in the circles? Like, how are they distinctly different one versus the other? What would you say that would be? And you can type it in. Okay. So yeah, I would agree with Dre there. Melina, I would agree with you as well. Smooth versus rough. Okay. Vector is smoother, raster is that. Pixelization Photoshop, and not the case in AI. Okay. Smooth versus blocky. Okay. Now let's go back to elements of art. So what is creating the smooth image in that circle on top? How is that being created? Using what type? Okay. Melina, you got it right. Okay. So what element is that that's creating it? So if a 5-year-old saw that circle, they said, oh, that is a what? or what element was used to create that image there? Okay. Or defined, okay. Yeah, like what shape, or there you go, Jonathan, you got it. What kind of line would that be? Well, I think you named it. They're lines, right? That's kind of the main difference between the raster versus now Adobe Illustrator, which is vector. Now, in science, they say that vector is kind of like a distance between 2 points, right? And that's kind of like the idea behind the program. But know this, Illustrator, if you can see, is on the right, and then something like Photoshop is on the left. What do you notice about vector versus raster? What's the difference between like the house or the Obama image on the right versus the left? What's that? If a 5-year-old saw it, they would say, oh, I see, this is a versus that. What would you say that would be? What's the key differences between the two? Let's make this image a little bit bigger. Okay. Vector's cartoony, raster's more real life. Yeah. Now, and yeah, and by cartoony, what would you mean? Cartoony is defined as a real versus cartoon. And all of us know that anything that is a cartoon is hand-drawn, made up of shapes. Yep, that's right, Dre. Icons, right? Simple shapes. In other words, right, vector are basically a bunch of lines combined to create shapes, and those shapes create the graphic, right? So Adobe Illustrator is a drawing program, but fundamentally it is basically a program that draws lines, which draws shapes, and then those shapes add up to create images. And that's the key difference. Photoshop is about those pixels we just saw that you see on the bottom of my screen here, or your screen, and Illustrator is all about drawing lines. So that's kind of the idea there. Are these slides available so you can look back at them? Yes, I'll add this. This wasn't added to the activities, but I will add it to this week's activities just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a understanding. So yeah, I'll throw that in there within the activities for you so you can reference it. But yeah, so vector graphics basically are made up of file formats like AI, which is short for Adobe Illustrator, PDF, WMF, FLCs, right? Font data is stored in that, right? So fonts that we download are primarily vector, and they are the fancy term is resolution independent. What does that mean? Basically, what that means is that I could take a vector graphic and I can make it bigger and it won't get blurry. And that's why fonts are made of vector graphics or Illustrator lines or lines, because any size I put it, whether it's a 6-point font size up to a 100-point size, it never gets blurry. That's by design. And so fonts are made of vector graphics specifically so that they are sharp at any size that I go. Okay. Does that kind of make sense? So they're really good at keeping things big and small without getting blurry. And they're super small in size because all it is a bunch of lines, right? It's not 256 shades of color in a little square, which takes up more memory in the computer. All it is just 2 dots and a line connecting them. That's it. Yeah, the file sizes are super small. And so what makes vector so great is scalable without losing image quality. So bigger and sharper, never gets blurry, right? They're math-based, which means to create a graphic, it just calculates numbers instead of storing shades of color. The computer's really good at calculations, right? Vector files aren't internet browser friendly. Well, now they are. They're basically now capable of doing that. So, which is really, really helpful, okay? Question. So is that why a PDF reduces the sharpness of photographs from where they originally were published from? Yes. PDFs are mostly these personal document files or portable document files or PDFs are basically designed to be more vector based. And so they're designed so that you can move them forward as documents. Now images are now included, but now they do get reduced in size of images because they weren't meant to be a Photoshop image. So yeah, so PDFs were originally intended to be mostly for more for like for written material, which are vector, fonts, graphics, images, writings. And of course, as we added images, the file sizes get a little bit bigger, but ultimately they get reduced down in size. But they're really good for vector files, vector text, like a Word document, basically. But not everyone has a Microsoft Word, so the PDF format file is like the universal format for like vector files or vector documents, if that makes sense, right? That's why it's called a portable document format, or so it's a file format that all computers love, basically. And so that's kind of why we have PDF files the way it is. Okay. So can you guess? All right. There, I got 3 images here. Okay. Can you guess which one of these is the raster and which one of these is the vector? So, okay. So there's going to be an image here that is a photo, and there's an image here that is a drawing. Can you guess which one of these is the drawing, the vector illustration that was drawn in Illustrator? And a lot of students say, well, professor, this is kind of crazy. Like, you're kind of telling me that one of these is drawn? Absolutely. If you had to guess which one of these is drawn, which one would you guess? And then I'll give you a couple seconds to answer, and I'll tell you what the answer is. Go ahead and type it in the chat, by the way. So take your guess, and you can make it public for everyone. But which one of these is drawn vector, line, shapes, colors, using Adobe Illustrator? Which one do you think it might be? I should get like the trivia, like the Jeopardy song in the background. Okay, really interesting. So we see the girl, Francisca says the glove, Jesus says glove is vector, while the other two are raster. The girl, because her hair looks like it blends together. Okay. All right, these are some good guesses so far. Okay, I think the vector illustration is the drink and the raster is the image of the girl and the glove. Okay, cool. All right. All right, are you ready? I'm gonna tell you. They're all vector. Okay, so all those images are vector graphics. Okay, I know it's pretty wild when you think about it. So that girl is all drawn in vector. Okay, that's how powerful Adobe Illustrator is. Okay, a proficient vector artist can create images that look like a photo, and yeah, it takes a huge amount of time to do that. And that's why a photo is easier. Does that make sense? So it's pretty amazing what it can do, but that's how powerful this program is. So at the end of the day, just know, guys, that what we will create will ultimately look like illustration, but with a lot of time and a lot of practice, you can get to photo quality, Photoshop level, if you truly wanted to. Okay. So that's the power of the program. All right. So a couple things I was gonna do just to kind of break it up a little bit. We'll throw that in there. We'll have a little bit of fun. But know this, that vector, at the end of the day, what I want you to walk away with is that vector is what we'll be using in Adobe Illustrator. Okay. Bitmap raster is typically what you would find in a Photoshop level class. Yes, your monitor is interpreting the drawing into pixels, but but it's not going to look blurry when the computer's interpreting dots and lines at a greater scale. Does that make sense? So it's the way the file is set up. The computer will take your Illustrator file and make math calculations, fill it in with shades and color, which are pixels, but it'll always be sharp no matter what the size, no matter what the scale. And the file size is really small, and it loves that. So bitmaps or rasters are great for photos, great for videos, and fonts are stored in vector format to ensure that the quality is sharp, big or small, any size. Okay, so that being said, we're gonna have a little bit of fun, a little bit of an activity here. I will create an activity for this and give you guys some points for it. But we're gonna create at least 2 bitmap images, and we'll use a website called pixelart.com. Okay, just to give you guys a little bit of a feel of how this stuff works. Okay, let me go ahead and put this into the chat, and hopefully it'll come through. And let me go ahead and switch screens, and then I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of time to create, because I want to give you guys some creation time. And I'm going to switch my screen and go to, so forgive the gray block there. I'm basically have my window over the shared screen, and I'm going to come and switch it over to pixel art here. Here we go. So let me try to post it in the chat so that way it's as easy and clickable. Much better. We love blue links that we can click and open. So we're gonna have some fun, okay? We're gonna give you guys a little bit of time, and before we do, I'm gonna promise you guys a little break. But what we'll do is that when we get back from break, we're gonna talk about pixelart.com. And basically what you're gonna do is that you're gonna just get familiar with pixels and how it all kind of flows together. But you're gonna create a very small pixel graphic of your choice. It uses a computer-based software, a cloud-based drawing software, but you'll get a chance to kind of create your pixels and everything of that sort. And we'll get like some of the settings down in terms of like what the pixel sizes are going to be. The short answer is that I would probably go with like creating a new document at about 24 by 24 pixels. So, or 32 is also a good one. So I would probably say maybe a fav icon would be cool. Clear the entire drawing. Yeah, we'll make a little favicon, and we'll make it like 16 pixels by 16 pixels. And then that way you can see literally like the pixels that are there. How did I get there? It's under pixelart.com, so it's in the chat. I'll paste it in there. But what we'll do is that we'll take a quick 10-minute break, okay? And when we get back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about the graphic. But basically for this exercise, you're going to create a little graphic, nothing spectacular, nothing too fancy, but just a small graphic of or icon of something. It could be a happy face, it could be a sun, it could be a star, it could be Super Mario, but Super Mario. But we're gonna get a little bit familiar with pixels and some of the tools as a little bit of an entry into this world of like of raster images, and then we'll transition into the vector with Adobe Illustrator. But I wanted to kind of give you a little sneak peek at what's to come next. Okay, so we'll take a quick 10-minute break, and we'll go for 10 minutes. I'm gonna check in with the packaging class to see how they're doing. And then we'll come in and we'll talk a little bit about this and have some time to create. Okay, guys? So let's give it 10 minutes. It's 8:16. So we'll come back at 8:26. And then we'll talk a little bit about what is pixel art and how we can create our graphic. Okay? If that works for you guys, a little thumbs up emoji. And we'll come back in about 10 minutes to kind of get you set up and going from there. Cool. All right, guys. I shall return. I'm going to check in on packaging design. And go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right, I shall return. Hey guys, back again. So thank you guys for your patience. So hopefully we got a chance to take a break, but also make it back to pixel art. So just out of curiosity, how many guys have already gotten a little bit started on the pixel art website? Maybe a little thumbs up emoji just to see where you are with that. If you started kind of exploring a little bit. If not, don't worry. We'll talk a little bit about it right now and share a little bit of what pixel art is, okay? Now, for this particular exercise, this is really like more for like fun and flexing your your creativity. So I would probably say, and for this particular one, just for the sake of time this evening, I would probably say let's do like maybe like, you know, one, no more than like two concepts, okay? And the way it really works is this is a cloud-based program, and meaning that you don't need to download it or anything of that sort. And when you click onto it, you can literally say, I want to create a new drawing. And let's take it back to the home page. And we'll skip the link there and come back to it. And we can literally start doing a drawing with this particular graphic. So, and I always like doing this as kind of like a little introductory level event just to see what the exercises are and just to give people a little bit of a feel for it. We'll do one drawing. How about that? Okay, and we'll kind of give you guys a little bit of some points for the participation of that. Okay, so you can click on to start drawing. Okay, and when you click on to start drawing, clear the annotation there. Didn't save my new drawing, so let's go ahead and close that out. We can actually like modify the size of the drawing or the graphic to like just about anything that you want, right? So in this particular instance, if you have like a new illustration and it's like 100 by 100 pixels, let's say, just to kind of save a little bit on the time, what we can do is that we can go specifically to the little gear on the upper left-hand side. It looks like 3 little gears, and that's like right about here, which is the gear. And when you click onto that, you'll get a window that says settings. And under settings, we can create like a new image. And that new image will be found right over here. So let me go ahead and direct you there. So you can click onto like a new image there. Okay. And we basically clicked onto that gear there just a second ago. So we can click onto new. And we click onto new, we can actually set up a blank canvas with certain dimensions, right? And we said that, you know, typically your screen is made up of like thousands of pixels, right? So I would probably say if we kept it to about 16 by 16, which is really small compared to the screen, or more specifically here at the bottom, which is called a favicon or fav icon, 16 by 16 pixels, it'll keep a very, very small image. You could go up to 32 if you wish, which is a little bit more, about double the size of the pixels. But basically what you're doing is a little tiny icon that normally will be found in your little browser. So if you see where it's blue, that little blue square up here where my little blue arrow is right about there, that little icon that's in the browser looks like a little lock where you kind of see the little icons when you go to different websites. That's called a fav icon or favicon. And so that's basically 16 by 16 pixels compared to your screen. That's tiny. But we can actually make that on pixel art zoomed in according to that. So you're what you're basically doing is zooming in and creating an enlarged version of that little image but it basically translates to the little tiny icon that's inside your browser when you type in a website, where the little blue arrow is. Just to give you a perspective of what 16 by 16 is roughly in comparison to your screen, that's literally 16 pixels by 16 pixels on your screen, on your monitor, on your phone. So it's tiny, but that just gives you some perspective. Okay, so maybe you want to create a lock, maybe you want to create a little happy face, maybe you want to create a little heart. Maybe Super Mario. You get to pick what you like to create, and then we can take a little screenshot of that creation and hold on to it, and I'll add a little activity that you can upload with the presentation, of course, that you can access from this evening. So I always allow a little bit of time for creation, and here's a great opportunity to create that. Okay. So once you see 16 by 16, you can click onto new drawing, and then you'll create that new window. Okay. So take a moment to create it, and you should see basically a new window that pops up. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you guys have already got a chance to create the 16 by 16 or the 32 by 32 pixel canvas? You see kind of like this white canvas on your screen. That would be great. Okay, perfect. If you haven't gotten a chance to, feel free to kind of follow the settings here, the little gear, and then you go from that gear. Does anyone want me to repeat that process one more time, actually from the top, starting from the home screen? If that's you, maybe give me a little thumbs up, and I can repeat the process from the very top. Okay, great, so we're good. Okay. And okay, and how many guys are okay with this screen? You already have all the settings and everything, and we can go to new drawing. Are we okay with that? Maybe a quick thumbs up emoji. Okay. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so then we'll create that new image there, and I'll clear out everything here. Click on new drawing, and then is it okay to create the new drawing? Yeah. And you can create just about anything with a graphic. If you want to open up a new tab on your window or on your mobile phone, and you literally want to type in the word bitmap or bitmap image or raster graphic or bitmap graphic, you can get a huge catalog, obviously, from the internet. Gotta love the internet for giving us a huge list of different ideas. But you can do lots of really cool things. So you can reference something if you like. Feel free. Gosh, it could be a logo, it could be a vector. You can even type in pixel image, or as for inspiration, maybe you want to do a slice of pizza or happy face or a rainbow heart or Squidward. There's a lot of different things that you can do with it. But I would love to give it at least a good, 20 minutes, I think. Would 20 minutes be okay to kind of have you guys create one image or so, 15 to 20 minutes roughly? Just one little graphic that you can create. So that would be the idea there. Okay, so we'll set you up. Keep it simple, nothing too complicated. They're meant to be iconic, so you can even alternate your colors on the right here, on the lower right, to kind of play with different colors and different shades, but definitely have some fun with it overall, okay? What I'll do is I'll create a quick little Padlet too and set it up, but I'll create a quick activity with the presentation as well, so that you can refer to it for this evening. So I'll go ahead and I'll create that as well, okay? All right. Okay, so let's give it about 15 to 20 minutes till top of the hour. I still like to kind of go over some of the basic Illustrator functions and tools and things of that sort that can lead us into Thursday, but let's take a few minutes to create something, and I think it will be really fun and really interesting, okay? So let me go ahead and create that post on Canvas. I'll call that, I guess, vector versus raster, and I'll post that up right about now, okay? Be just a few moments, and then we'll get it going for you there. Okay, guys, so I was able to get the activity posted on Canvas. So I made some slight modifications, included the link for today's presentation as well, so as a reference. But I also put onto the chat the link where you can post up your pixel. And if I share, you'll start to see some other designs as well, which is kind of fun from previous classes. So this is from last semester. Mind you, some classes had a little bit more time here and there and did some things independently. So don't feel like, take it with a grain of salt. I don't want anyone feeling like, oh man, like, there are people that put some time into this, okay? Some a little bit more so than others, and that is totally okay. But these are a combination of college, these are a combination of high schoolers. But I always find it a little bit fun to kind of share across the board between all the different grade levels. It's pretty amazing some of the things that that you can create just using some colored squares, as it were. So, and if you want to rate them and put some stars next to them, that'd be great. But there's a lot of fun ones and some funny ones and some weird ones, but everyone's at a different location when it comes to their designs. So okay, and as you're posting, try to get your name in there too. That would be awesome. So that way we can get you some points for participation this evening. And then we can kind of enter it in there. So you can always put it back in, or you can go add into the comment section and put your name if you didn't get a chance to. I know I forgot to give you that information, but you can always go back and modify it if you wish. So feel free, and then to kind of add a couple of comments there, okay? All right. It looks like they're coming in slowly but surely. And they're cute. There are a lot of cute ones too that are coming in too as well. Okay. And if it's not done, don't worry about it. You'll have plenty of time to add at a later point. If you want to do a new one later in the week, you can. But you're feel free to kind of add to that, okay? Let me take 1 minute. I just want to check something really quick on my computer. So I'll be back in exactly 1 minute, and then we'll continue with some of the basic Illustrator principles, okay? Okay, I'll be right back. Okay. All right, guys. So back again. Wow, you guys made some cute ones here. Look at this. So let's give some 5 stars here. It's pretty amazing. The things that you can create with just some simple squares, like I said. And you can totally add some comments, totally fine. And I'll give you guys some points and some pluses there. So very, very, very cool. I don't know if it was old school DJ for tonight. I think it did. So all fun, all great. And again, feel free if you want to add to it. This is a 24/7 link and it's always operating at all times. So, okay. So did we get everybody in there? Hopefully we did. And if you got a chance to upload or planning to upload, give me a little thumbs up. Again, you know, you have plenty of time. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. It can be something as simple as like a little happy face or smiley face, and it's totally fine. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of perspective on, and leave you some creative time too. We can get caught up doing so much writing and this and that I wanted to start transitioning us into expressing ourselves creatively. And so what better way than to do some pixel art in the midst of all that, right? So, so let's kind of switch gears for a second with the last 20 minutes of class. And let's just kind of talk about some of the basics when it comes to Adobe Illustrator, okay? So let's kind of break it down for a little bit, okay? So Adobe Illustrator, we are here, right? We've been here. We talked a little bit about vector versus raster graphics, but really the last presentation was ultimately to kind of get us started on understanding the power of the program. And so I just kind of want to go over some of the basic fundamentals when it comes to Adobe Illustrator. And and when we talk about the basic fundamentals, the exercise that we're going to do is basically the toolbar exercise. And we're going to start labeling some of the toolbars as our first exercises. So we're going to know the tools. So we're going to ease into it. On Thursday, we'll do our abstract facial expression exercise. So if you want to get a little bit of a head start on that too, you can. Feel free. The video is available for this week for those of us that want to get a little bit of a head start. So feel free to do that. And oh, I saw a rainbow in there. Elizabeth, looks great. So I'm still seeing on the other side the exercise. Or I'm sorry, the pixels are still like right in front of me here. So they're starting to come in. Okay, so Adobe Illustrator, guys. Oh gosh, there's so much to say about it. It's far and vast, right? But what I will say is just we'll break it down to some basic fundamentals. Okay. Now, you kind of saw that Adobe Illustrator has a lot of different features. Okay. And those features are far and vast, right? From photography, like image, realistic photo quality images, right? And it is the industry standard. So know that all companies that are out there are using Adobe Illustrator in some way, shape, or form. You could argue that there are other competitors, and I'll mention them at later points, but really Adobe is the industry standard, and they're heavily reliable, and they're always upping their game when it comes to their graphic programs, obviously because they've been around for decades. And so it is a vector graphics application where you can create complex illustrations for just about any medium, okay, as we saw. So powerful stuff. Some of the favorites of these are obviously incorporating logos, flyers. You can make websites with this program. You can design all types of styles, characters, typographic designs. It's really great. I would probably say, on average, you will always see people creating things related to typography, posters, T-shirts. Can you do it in Photoshop? Absolutely. It's anything you could do in Illustrator, you could technically do in Photoshop. Anything you could do in Photoshop, you could technically do in Illustrator. And so it's, it's kind of like a one size fits all today, but in the beginning, as you saw in the video, it was really intended for illustration. And so it's kept to that spirit of drawing and being an illustration type of a program editor, right? Gosh, you can create so much, right? Logos, right? So logos is a popular one. Packaging design, as we're doing in our packaging class. Icons, which you saw with the little favicons that you create for websites. Icons for mobile phones. Drawings, fonts, typographic posters. My goodness, even maps. I'm not sure if you realize this, but your Google map, your Apple map, you know how you can zoom in on those buildings, right? Not the photo ones, but the drawings. Those are vector graphics. And now you know why, because you can actually go bigger on maps. So next time you open up your map application on your phone, the reason you can zoom in and out and it looks super sharp is because somebody drew that. That's a lot of drawing. But somebody went in there and drew those vector graphics and for the world practically. And I'm sure there's programs that kind of did some of it, but those are all vector graphics, guys. So when you're in 2D mode or maps mode, not the satellite mode, but maps mode, those are vector graphics. And some of the 3D features in Apple Maps, those are 3-dimensional vector graphics. And so all that is resolution independent, which means I can go larger, smaller, never goes blurry, right? Powerful stuff, powerful stuff. It makes illustration easier. Okay, so for those of us that like to draw, whatever you can draw on paper, this program can redraw or simulate drawing on paper. It can make simulations on just about anything that can be expressed by pencil, brush, calligraphy, you name it. This thing can create any type of human brush stroke, and you'll see that a little bit on Thursday, what those brushes look like and how they can be expressed. So we can simulate just about anything you can do on a surface using this program. And vector paths are lines connected to anchor points. So the main idea behind this entire program is this kind of connecting the dots, as it were. This idea of one point and another point create a line, and those points add up to multiple lines, which add up to shapes, which add up to colors and form. And so this notion of connecting the dots, right? If you remember the old school drawings from way back when we were kids, like connect the dots. And when you connect the dots, it creates a graphic. It's kind of like that. You'll see they're called anchor points. And when you create anchor points, then the computer will connect the dots for you. So you're just dropping points and the computer draws it, but you'll find out that we can also go back and make changes to those points and make changes to those curved lines using handles, using things like the pen tool. And if you don't know what I mean, you will, and you'll love me and you'll thank me for at the end when I teach you those tools, because that one tool works for 3 different programs or multiple programs actually. So we'll be working on that. Vector graphics, like I said, are resolution independent. They resize without changing quality, so they never blur when you go bigger. And again, they're great for fonts, great for shapes, great for redrawing. You can draw cubes, you can redraw images, you can trace photos as you saw. You can make traces that look like photos. So you can go one direction, go the opposite direction. It's really great and super powerful when done right. Again, I am not at anywhere near this level of drawing humanistic or photorealistic images of people using this program, but it is capable of doing that. And here's a couple of more examples of what this thing looks like when you draw vector images of people's faces. So here's one of Katy Perry that an artist used and recreated her entirely in Adobe Illustrator. So amazing stuff, right? And very similar to like a computer graphic or creating some type of a CG-like graphic, okay? And when we launched the program, for some of you that had a chance to open it and launch it to test it, that it's working, it's like most other interfaces for most other programs, right? We have a workspace or application bar, menu bar at the top. We have tools on the left, that's our toolbar. And we also have additional tools on the right-hand side of the interface, which is called our collapse panels or panels, followed by an artboard in the center, okay? Different programs call it different things, but this program will ultimately call the toolbar, and panels collapsible panels, okay? So we'll dig deeper, and there's even status bars at the bottom there, so we'll see it all unfold as we go. But I like to think of the interface as three things, right? The top, menu, tools on the left, panels on the right, which are kind of like my additional bells and whistles and features, but all the tools are found on my left on average, which is great. Okay, you can switch between different types of interfaces. So, hey, Mr. A, what if I want to, make a font? Are there tools specifically for fonts that this program can show me? Absolutely. That's called the workspace, and it's also known as a workspace switcher. You can switch spaces of work or workspaces. So much like a tabletop where you have different tools and certain tools for certain projects, this program can do the exact same thing. It'll actually give you different tools related to the project that you want to do. So if you want to do fonts or lettering, it'll definitely give you the tools for that. If you want to create certain tools for web, it'll give you specific tools that are good for web. So it can actually give you the best tools ultimately for narrowing things out. When we start the program, the essentials are key. So we'll work with the essential tools. But we can switch between painting, with laying out posters, with tracing, with fonts, lettering for websites, and then some. So it's a really, really useful thing. So they try to make it as easy as possible to give you the most popular tools for certain projects, which are mostly used in this. So the workspace is also a good indication of what mostly the programs are used for as well, such as tracing, printing, painting, typography, web, things of that sort. Menu bars, we'll get into that a little bit later, but it gives us access to additional tools. That's kind of a given. Most programs have menu bars, so we'll explore that a little bit later. But really where we're gonna live this week is in our toolbar. Believe it or not, there's 40 plus different tools in the toolbar alone, and we're gonna label all of them. So because knowing where the tools are and knowing what they're called are key in this program. I don't know how many times people will talk to you about certain tools, or students have know the program, but they don't know certain tools or the names of the tools. So just to kind of start it off, we're going to make this Illustrator toolbar exercise really simple for us, and we're going to know the tools. And the way it's going to work is that in Canvas, and I'll switch this image here, but in Canvas there is a link, and inside of that link is a Google slide, three slides, and or 3 slides within that file, and we're going to make a copy, or you're going to make a copy, and within that copy, and don't worry, we'll leave you time on Thursday to work on it. Okay, so don't worry, we will leave you time to work on it. But basically what's going to happen is that you're going to make a copy of that file, okay, like we normally did with the other exercises. So that's kind of the template of how we do things in the class. And when we get in, we're going to open up Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to label in our slides, in our Google slide, with a little text box, the name of the tool, followed by a little line or a little drawing of what that tool is called, okay? And so we will be opening up the program and identifying all the different tools, which is found on the left-hand side of your screen, okay? So the toolbar will always launch on the left, and we'll show you how you can switch it from a single column to a double column on Thursday. If you're familiar with that, great. If not, don't worry, we'll kind of run you through it. But essentially, what's going to happen is that we're going to revert to the program to see the names. And when we hover over each tool, it'll give us the name of the actual tool. So I'm going to open up my program for just a quick second, so just so you can get a little bit of a visual for it. While that's happening, I'm going to open up the slide so that you can see it. And I'll share my screen. And as we open up that file, at least it should be visualizing it. And here it is. That was packaging design. Here we go. So what's going to happen in this exercise is basically you're going to create kind of like a naming system. Some people like to do like 2 different font sizes for the subtools. Some people like to use colors. Some people like to use sort of like a grid system or hierarchy system. Think of it as like your own note card. You can color code, you can make different fonts, different sizes fonts, but basically what's going to happen is that you're going to kind of get into the habit of looking at your toolbar and hovering your mouse over a tool to see the name of that tool. And so we'll kind of see that in action in just a moment. Most tools you'll notice, and I'll kind of switch over to my presentation. When you look at the tool here in my presentation, what you'll typically find is that on the lower right-hand side of a tool, so for example, let's see if I can label it here with my arrow, you'll have tools that will basically be like this little icon here, right? And all tools have a little icon to represent it. But here in the lower right-hand side, there's this little sort of right triangle, little tiny triangle, okay? It's right to the bottom right of certain tools. That little triangle is a little marker or an indicator of a subtool. What that means is that inside that tool are more tools, okay? And when you hover your mouse over that tool, it'll tell you the name, but when you hold the click, you actually see additional names within that. And so that's your subtool set. So I'm gonna try to see if my zoom doesn't slow down my Adobe Illustrator program, but I wanna give you guys a little visual of what that kind of looks like. So you can kind of see it in action. So let's take a look here. I'm going to close that. I'm going to switch over to Adobe Illustrator, and we'll repeat the process on Thursday, so we can kind of walk you through it. Keynote Adobe Illustrator. Here we go. So in Adobe Illustrator, when I open, it'll take me to like a home screen, and we'll go through the process. And I have all these other apps and files that I've used in the past, right? But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new document, and as we create that new document, we'll basically select like a print file, inches. And we'll go over that a little bit so we can kind of see all the different settings and go over all the different templates that are available to us. But basically, we're going to create a new document. And in that new document, we should see our artboard, our toolbar on the left, menu on top, panels on the right. It might take a couple of seconds just for the program to launch, just because I have Zoom open and a few other apps running in the background. But we're basically going to try to let the program open it up. And I'll keep my fingers crossed and make sure that it doesn't slow it down. And I'm gonna also close the music there for a second to open up some RAM. And sometimes the process is a little bit longer than others. But we should basically see the interface open in just a couple of seconds. But until that happens, let's go ahead and go back to my presentation, and then I'll switch back in just a couple of seconds to that there. So we'll switch back here in just a moment. Okay, so on the left, when the interface opens, we'll see a series of tools there, obviously. And when you hover over the tool, it'll basically, when your mouse hovers over it, it'll tell you the name of that tool. Whatever that name is, we're going to type it in our presentation, what that tool is. When you hover over a tool and you click and hold the click, then you'll see the subtools within that. Perfect. My document just opened. So let me switch back. And let's get that going here. Okay, perfect. So let me close that, and I'm gonna go to my workspace switcher so that I can set it up to essentials and come back to essentials classic so that we can kind of set that up. So let's go to essentials classic. We'll close the color panel there. Okay. So on the left-hand side of my screen, you should see this toolbar here. Sometimes it's a single panel, but I'm just gonna click and pull that top bar and bring it out to the center of my screen. And then you'll see on the upper right-hand side, there's like these two little tiny, and I'll pull the arrow here. Oh, great, disappeared. But essentially, there's gonna be two little arrows pointing to the right. And when I click it, it'll turn it from a single column to a double column view. And when you hover your mouse over that tool, it'll show you the name. So direct selection tool is the white arrow. We're going to type it in the slide. Now, if I hover over it and then I click and I hold the click, then I'll see the name. I have direct selection tool, and then hidden inside that direct selection tool is a group selection tool, right? So there's tools within tools in this program. And so every little arrow or triangle or on the lower right, you're going to click, hold the click, and then you're going to type in the names of those tools. And there's some that have 4, others have 3, some could have up to 5 different tools within that. And to make life a little bit easier for you, then you don't have to type in the word tool, as it were, but you'll have you can just type in what it is. Okay. So this first exercise is really just to know what the tools are, what the names are, and where they're located. And that's going to be our first exercise. Okay. Once we're done with that, then we'll do the brush exercise, because we'll need to know where the brush tool is, and then we'll need to know where the blob brush tool is. And that's going to lead us into that particular tool set too. And then we get to create faces and abstract expressions of faces. Okay. So that's literally the first exercise. We're scaffolding, we're ramping up, we're going baby steps along the way. Okay. And so that's going to be our process overall. And so we're going to do that in class together on Thursday, and then we'll switch over into the faces exercise, and we're going to go forward from there and build it up. Okay. Okay. Does that make sense for everyone? If it does, maybe a little thumbs up emoji, but I just wanted to make sure that that kind of made a little bit of sense in terms of where we're going and how we're building this up. Okay. Cool. All right. Perfect. So that's the first step. So we want to know the name of the tool, and we're going to go into a blob brush tool, and then we'll ramp up slowly and go into designing or drawing with the pen tool, and then orienting pages with the drawings, which leads to posters, which is going to lead to t-shirts, which is going to lead to more high-level illustrations and drawings, right? So we're going to scaffold up, and you're going to feel really good about it by the time we're done in the class. Okay, so it's all part of the my mad plan to get you guys proficient in the whole class. And yes, we will be doing warm-ups on the principles of design, so I can keep you guys engaged and visually and analyzing and deconstructing to add to your visual vocabulary, so that when we get to posters, you'll know and how to design effectively based on those principles. But we got to get you there first. Okay. All right. Perfect. So I feel like that this evening went by pretty quickly, and if it did, great. If you have any questions, guys, definitely save them for Thursday, because we'll go over all these pieces again, and we'll have the recording available by tomorrow morning, so that you can kind of review and get a little bit of a visual for it. Okay. All right. Are we feeling good? If so, give me a little thumbs up emoji. Hopefully we're excited about Illustrator. Again, thank you guys for your patience, but we wanted to get theory in before anything, so that we can get you to it. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right, guys. Simple as that. It's 9:33. I went 3 minutes over our time a little bit, but go ahead and have a good night. We'll see you again on Thursday, and then we'll jump into the exercises and leave some class time for you guys to work. Okay. All right. You are officially dismissed, and we'll see you. We'll see you then. Have a good night. Be safe. All right. See you then, guys.